and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight. I think this will be a good opportunity to hear from your candidates, and I'm going to start. Wade Virgin is going to give an invocation. I'd ask Wade to come up. Is Wade here? Yes.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful this night that we can be able to be together in such an event. We're grateful for the freedoms we have in America, where we can have the freedom of speech and the freedom of selecting who we think is the best candidate and the best issues and be able to support them. Father, we're thankful for the candidates this evening. We pray that thou will bless each of them individually as they're somewhat out of their comfort zone, possibly that they'll be blessed and be able to present their message that they have to us, and we in turn will be able to receive it in the spirit that it's given. We pray that thou will bless us throughout this election, that we'll be able to avoid anger and malice, that we'll be able to have a good election season and be able to find the good quality people that we do need. And this we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Wade. Roger Cook, which is the Precinct 10 committeeman, is going to come up and give the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's my pleasure to introduce Trent Clark. Trent is the Region 6 chair. He's from Soda Springs, and he's graciously agreed to come down and moderate this for us tonight. And thank you, Trent.
Could I get the candidates for the county offices to come forward? Have seats on the back row here, except for the candidates running for Commissioner District 1, if those two candidates would take seats up here at the table. While we do that, while these candidates come forward, I'm going to do something a little self-serving, but it's not really. By the way, I am acting region chair. I'm acting because our chair is actually in the military, and he's not available this evening, so I'm the vice chair who stepped up as the acting region chair. The region is Southeast Idaho. I actually live in Soda Springs, where I am involved in malting, and I actually sell my malt to whoever wants to use malt. Some of them, ferment it. I don't know why they would do that. But I also use my malt in making malt balls. Well, I've obtained my competitors' malt balls. These are not mine. And I'm going to award these to whoever has the best trivia answers about the Republican Party. And I'll be doing that in between the breaks of our candidates. Okay, I see we have our Commissioner District 1 candidates here, and I'm going to ask our candidates to do me a favor. I am going to give them the option of picking from my hand 3 numbers. And those numbers are going to be 1, 2, or 3. And whatever number you draw is the order in which you will speak. Now, there were some really good protocol for how today's forum will go. Have you gentlemen all seen that protocol? And are you accepting of that protocol? Just so everyone knows, there's 3 questions that will go to each of these candidates. They will also have a chance to introduce themselves, and they'll also be given a 1-minute closure. We need to try to move through this entire panel in 1 hour, so the timing that you'll see down here, please stick to it. Don't go over your time, because what I will have to do as the MC is I will, at the end of your time, I will immediately recognize the next person to speak, okay? There's just only one thing. The county is involved in some litigation. It would be harmful to the county if we got involved in any kind of discussion of that, so that we kind of have to make that one issue off limits in this discussion. But the questions have already been either supplied by the County Republican Central Committee or the local government class here at the high school, or the last question will come from the audience, and they'll have been placed in a box with your name on it, okay? And we'll proceed in that order with the first order of business, a 2-minute introduction. Whoever drew number 1, would you please introduce yourself and begin us tonight?
Do you want us to stand or just stay sitting?
I think the microphones are set up so that you can speak from sitting.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm Drew Jensen. I've lived in the Firth area my whole life. I've been in agriculture my whole life. We've raised potatoes, wheat, alfalfa, and beef cows. I am happily married to a beautiful woman, and we have 4 children. My wife, Nolene, and I have managed our business. We've been able to work through the thick and the thin of the agriculture business, and we're still in business today. I've had experience working on different boards. I've been on the school board for 13 years. I've served on Bingham Co-op's board. I served on Snake River Valley Irrigation Board, and I am on a grazing association board, and I'm currently serving as the vice chair on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've enjoyed my time there, and I've been able to learn valuable lessons of how to see the problems and work through them in a pleasing manner and be able to compromise and to give and take. I'm grateful for this opportunity. It seems like you can prepare 2 minutes and you can't get there fast enough, but the seconds go by quick. My mother and father were the 2nd generation farmers in our family, and we've been able to carry on that all the way through till now, and we're involved with my son, and my son is preparing to lead our operation going forward. Thank you.
Okay, and who drew number 2?
My name is... Here you go, Mark.
Don't start the time yet. Thanks, Jim. So my name's Mark Bear. My wife, Sherilyn, and I have both been longtime Bingham County residents. We've been married for almost 46 years now. Sherilyn has always been my biggest supporter. She is currently the library director for the Snake River School District and also the administrator for the Snake River online program. I grew up on a farm not too far from here, and as a young man growing up on a farm, I learned, just like all young men, how to work hard. There was always work to do on the farm. I learned how to get along with the people that I worked with, and possibly the most important thing I learned is how to finish a job, even if it was uncomfortable or difficult. My dad and brother and I, we spent 29 years farming together. Some of those years were profitable. Some of them were not as profitable as we had hoped. But what I learned from some of those lean years was that the same concepts that get you through the lean years on the farm are also helpful as a county commissioner. One of the things that I learned was that it's important to develop good relationships. Relationships are one of the most important things to me, whether it's relationships with the people that we work with, or other employees, or other elected officials, or our legislators. Relationships are built on trust, and they are some of the most important, that's one of the most important things to me. The other thing that
Okay. And Mr. Wolf, I believe you're number 3.
I was waiting for him to get ready.
Okay.
Good evening, guys. I'm really honored and humbled to be here today. My name's Stephen Wolf. I'm here today because there's quite a few things. First, my kids and family, we live in this county, and it's very important to have long-term outlooks and aspects to allow for the county to continue to be productive and grow, as long with keeping our farming areas farmable. The next thing is a lot of people sit and wonder exactly what it requires to be a commissioner. And in this county, really, it requires that you're 18 and can file the paperwork. I think it's time for the county to take a new step forward with educated-based and business-based commissioners. We currently built a butcher shop in Firth when there wasn't one available. We also took the time and effort to make sure that we could support the community where we could there. I don't see a lot of progressive growth that's happened within Bingham County in the 12 years we've lived here. A lot of the things that you see are status quo-based benefits to the community with no real progression available. By allowing that, we have allowed ourselves to lag behind other counties around us, and that's unacceptable. Bingham County is a great county, and it's a great place to be, but we also need to be at the forefront of what needs to be going on, not only politically, but in socially and economically. We're living in a time past COVID that has changed so many things, and the problem is there hasn't been changes on the administration and leadership level to allow for that. The other issues we're running into is it's time for Bingham County to take a step forward and move past the status quo. So the reality is we're sitting at a pivotal point in time for Bingham County, and it's time for you as the voting populace to get to make a decision whether we're going to stay in the status quo or move into a new generational movement that allows for proper management.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we're going to begin with the questions. I am going to stagger the questions so different candidates will start answering, but then the final 1-minute close will go back to the original order, and that way you don't get to speak first and last. Mr. Wolf will then have the last word on the panel. So for this one, we'll go in the following order: Mr. Baer, then Mr. Jensen, then Mr. Wolf. And this is the question that comes from the Bingham County Republican Central Committee. Explain the purpose of a county comprehensive plan and how necessary do you feel it is to have one? Mr. Baer.
thank you for that question.
And you'll get 90 seconds for this.
Okay, thank you. The comprehensive plan is part of our ordinance, and the comprehensive plan is the bottom layer, and it shows where the people would like to have growth happen in the county. We just updated our comprehensive plan, I believe it was about 5 years ago. It's important because anytime that there's a zone change that comes up, the first thing you refer back to is the comprehensive plan, and if it meets the comprehensive plan, usually then it's okay to do a zone change.
Okay.
That's all I have.
That's very good. Mr. Jensen.
So, as you some of us know the Senate just passed a bill that's recommending and mandatory that the counties and the city develop a comprehensive plan and a zone around the cities and try to come up with a plan that'll suit the county and the city equally. And I think that's very important to try to get the growth to centralize around the cities and move outward. And sitting on the Planning and Zoning Committee, I know that we've had meetings with some of the cities trying to adopt plans that would be beneficial to both city and county, but some of the county or the cities will walk away and anyway, they're separated on this issue. But with this mandatory application, that we have to come to an agreement on how it can best suit the cities and the counties and try to keep the growth within a certain boundary.
Okay, Mr. Wolf, same question.
The purpose of the comprehensive plan is really the backbone into all planning and zoning for a county situation. The first issue with comprehensive plans is they are amendable, which has a good and a bad thing. It's amendable because things change, but the comprehensive plan is really a very stable backbone to what should be happening in county development. In this county, we like to override the comprehensive plan as quickly as we can, I've noticed, and it's unconscionable, really. We spend the time, effort, and money to put one of these plans together, then not follow it. The other issues with it is, and Drew touched on this, is the impact zones are now being mandated that we use the impact zones and grow within rather than jumping and spurring. This is a great thing. It keeps urban sprawl at a minimum, and it also allows for infrastructure and development. I've spent the last 5 years of my life building infrastructure, wastewater, and water. You'll be surprised how many of our cities in this area do not have the ability to maintain the rapid growth that we're seeing and keep people on public utility. The other issues step in is when we start talking about wells and septics. At this point in time, we're pretty much at a free will run to drill wells and septics, which allow great issues with the aquifer. Yes, land rights are important, but there's also a mitigation standpoint from DEQ's responsibility to keep our water safe. So I will end because I'm out of time.
Okay. The next question comes from the local high school students. The question for you is, how can high school students actively participate in the local government decision-making process? And we will begin to answer this one first with Mr. Jensen, then Mr. Wolf, then Mr. Baer.
I think it's very important that our high school history teachers or whatever, I can't remember what they're called for sure now, but try to implement a desire to vote. You know, Bingham County, I can't remember what our population is, but only 22 to 23% of the people vote in the primaries. And that's kind of discouraging. Our forefathers fought very valiantly to preserve and have the right to have a voice and to be able to make differences in people's lives. Very thankful for the teachers that work hard, but also I feel like the young people have an opportunity to carry the torch. You know, as we campaign, people tell us to just campaign to the older generation because they're the only ones that vote. It's important that we instill in our youth the importance of being patriotic and standing up for what is right, and to try to bring the country together, but more importantly, to try to bring the county together on various issues and see if we can work through our issues and work together instead of being divided.
Okay. Now, this next one, we need to ask you to play fair. I'm going to give the three audience question boxes in front of you. Oh.
These guys get to
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead. Go ahead and answer yours.
don't let them have a chance.
No, I'm sorry.
I think I'm before you, Mark.
Okay,
This
so,
time around.
yeah, so the question is, from the high school students, what,
yeah.
what can they do to be politically active?
So, as high school students, there's a lot of things that you can be doing to be proactive in this. First of all, you might want to attend some city council or commissioner meetings. That way we understand the basic premise of how laws and dictation is made in the cities and counties. If you're lucky enough, you can go to American Legion Boys State. That's a very good program that teaches basic understanding and literacy of how education and politics meet. Every county has a certain designated to Boys and Girls State. This is a great program. It's put on by the American Legion, and I find that it rather helps younger people understand what civic duty is. The next thing we can do is we can be involved with campaigns. I know a lot of people in the past have had the high school football team hand out flyers and yard signs and things like that. That is a big thing for these kids. And as politicians, we should always look for ways to include them within our political aspect. You know, we're lucky enough to live in a small enough community that if someone showed up to Dave Cannon's place, I guarantee he'd be willing to talk to them and tell them about what he does. I guarantee that Julianne Young and Julie Van Orden would take time out of their day to talk to the youth and explain to them the importance of their roles and what they've been able to achieve during their time in office. And the biggest thing is don't get discouraged and don't think your vote doesn't matter, because everybody's vote matters, whether it's one vote, you know, for a commissioner's meeting or one for a county directive seats.
Mr. Bear.
One of the things that I've been invited to in the past, and it hasn't happened this election cycle yet, but I've been invited to speak to the local government classes, and I've always really enjoyed getting to interact with the students there. Another way that students can become more involved is to come into the commission chambers and watch how business is conducted. It's an important way to see how local government works. I have some grandkids that go to the local charter school, and one of the classes that they go to is to learn how to be a city planner. It's important for them to learn how, and they actually have a competition over in Boise that they go to. We've also had recently a couple of different groups of Boy Scouts that have come in that are working on their citizenship in the community merit badge. That's an important way for students to become involved in local government. One of the things that I wish that people would, especially students, would be more involved in is in the budgeting process. We very seldom have people come in to watch how the budgeting process works, and I think that that's one of the most important functions of local government.
Okay. So contained in those boxes are questions from the audience. We would ask in this order, Mr. Wolf, then Mr. Jensen, then Mr. Bear. Reach in, pull a question out. You don't get to pick which question you want to answer, just pick one, okay? And you will be given 90 seconds then to answer that question. You might want to read the question for the audience.
So it says, you claim to be a combat veteran. With what dates of your DD-214 to elaborate on your participation in a conflict displace? Kind of an odd writing pattern. My combat dates on my DD-214 are pretty easy. They're from 2005 to 2012. Right in the middle of Iraqi freedom. So that's, I don't
And
know.
per the rules, if you've answered the question, you may use the rest of your time to add any additional discussion.
So I'd like to talk about, real quickly, the benefits and the differences in what I bring to this than everyone else. I bring a different level of sophistication to government. Working at the USDA and managing major project budgets that are well over $90 million most of the time gives me the upper hand when it comes to dealing with a smaller budget of $30 million in which the county has. That's a big deal. And also being able to understand the infrastructure needs of the county is a whole nother ballgame when it comes to dealing with people. Infrastructure is so important as we grow, and there's so many ways that we can ruin a very good growth base by not planning for infrastructure prior to allowing infrastructure to be built. And that's a very important thing, because without infrastructure, we cannot expand, we cannot be progressive, and we cannot be the Bingham County that's going to be working itself into the next group. You know, that's the biggest thing right there is we do need a new outlook on infrastructure and the best way to make infrastructure work for Bingham County.
Okay. Mr. Jensen, would you reach into your box and withdraw one question? Oh, you have no question? Would you like to use your time?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to, I'll scoot over just a little bit. I'd like to discuss some of the things that I think are important to the county. One is, everywhere I've been to campaign, everybody feels like there's a lack of the ability to communicate with our current leaders, whether either way, everyone has decided that there needs to be more communication. There's folks in the Aberdeen area that don't feel like they're listened to. They feel like they're on the outer edges and that they are not listened to. There's one fellow that talks about there's county roads where he farms, but they're not maintained or not even a road at this point. There's others that feel like they have gone and asked questions and there's been no response given. I feel that the ability to communicate is one of my strongest suits. I feel that during my time as a school board member, was able to sit and listen to conflicting stories and be able to sit and through common sense make good judgment calls on how best to serve those constituents. And I look forward to leading Bingham County.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bear, would you, I see you do have a question in your Tupperware there.
Okay, here's the question. Well, on both sides. Staff has become increasingly more difficult to work with. They create new borrowers and constantly rules constantly for developers and builders. What would you do to make Bingham County staff easier to work with? We do have a new staff in our planning and development and in our building inspection. I think part of the problem is that there is a lack of understanding in between what is expected of the builders and the developers and what is expected of them. I think the answer to this problem is just to provide an opportunity for the developers and for staff to get together and talk through these issues. Oftentimes we hear this complaint that they're difficult to work with, and I think that the perception is that they are difficult to work with, but when we have talked to members of staff, what it is just a lack of communication.
Okay. Now we'll go to your 1-minute closing statement, and we'll proceed in the same order that we did with the opening statement. So, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you, everyone, for coming and attending. It seems like it's a never-ending task when we are campaigning to know where to approach people and where to put signs and who to speak with. So I'm thankful that you come out and are willing to listen to us tonight. One of the things that I'd thought about as we prepared for tonight was ways that we could have economic development in the county. You know, sometimes we look to bring new development in where a lot of times the development's already here. We just need to capitalize on our assets that we have. And I was going to just mention that the windmill project that just got put up, the red lights are a nuisance, but they will bring in between $600,000 and $800,000 of income into our county with not a lot of infrastructure necessary to generate that income capacity for our county. Thank you for letting me participate tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Well, first of all, thanks to you, Trent, for coming here, and thanks to the Republican Party for putting on this event, but mostly thanks for all of you for coming and listening to the candidates. We don't have an opportunity to express ourselves very often. What I would like to talk about real briefly is what I would like to see happen in the future in the next 2 years. You know, we've talked a little bit about the area of impact agreement. I think now that we have legislation in place, I think that we have an opportunity now to meet with each one of our cities. My understanding is that there's 12 months to come up with an agreement. It's always, we've been in these discussions, and it's always a difficult discussion, and so I look forward to having those difficult discussions. And I would appreciate your vote on May 21st. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Wolf.
I looked today and I noticed a couple of things. Bingham County is really sitting on the precipice of, do we continue to follow the same status quo that we've followed for the last 10 years? Or is it time to make a change and have different ideals and different perspectives step into the limelight? And that's really where we're at as a county, as a state. You know, things are changing so quickly after COVID that it's time that, you know, some updated thought and philosophy gets brought to the forefront. They've done a very good job up until this point with Bingham County overall, but it's definitely a time of change, and change isn't always bad. It's a little scary sometimes, but it's not always a bad thing. Change happens because the evolution of the world, the evolution of how things work. And if we can manage some reliable and progressive change, we'll be able to make Bingham County a lot more susceptible for things in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, these three gentlemen have put themselves forward to serve you. Please give them a round of applause. Okay. You gentlemen can either have a seat on the back or can take a seat in the audience if you'd like. Could I have the candidates for Commission District 3 step forward? And in the meantime, I'm going to ask a question. Who knows who the first Republican candidate for President of the United States was? Anybody else? First Republican candidate for President of the United States. You have an answer? Yes. Abraham Lincoln? It is not. He was, so he gets confused, he was the first successful Republican candidate for President of the United States. There was a candidate before him. He's actually the candidate who a county just to the north of us is named after. Not Jefferson. Madison. Not Madison. Rigby. Not Rigby. John C. Fremont. Now, I'll answer you get the multiple. John C. Fremont. Okay. Oh, that's a good idea.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, and you've drawn your order. I will let you introduce yourselves, beginning with 2 minutes. Thank you.
So my name is Will Allman. I was born and raised in Star Valley, Wyoming, specifically the little town of Thane. When I was growing up in Star Valley, it was a small rural community, much like Bingham County. It was driven by farms and commerce, and it was really self-reliant, and it was a wonderful place to live. Approximately 20 years ago, I moved over here to build a couple homes. I didn't know that I was going to stay here permanently. I met my wife, Amanda Wolfley, and we were married in 2007. At the same time, we purchased Riverside Greenhouse over here, just not too far from this high school. It was a small business that we thought we could enjoy and kind of rescue, and it's been a challenge for us. We've learned a lot. We've become a part of this community. We have wonderful customers that support us, and they're our friends, our dear friends now. I have a degree in political science from Idaho State University. I've always loved government and wanted to be involved, and I wasn't sure how I could do that. I originally thought it would be teaching on the side a little bit, government classes, and that's why I attended ISU, to sort of build that into the future for us. And that never really came to fruition, but here I am running for public office, and I believe that's an asset. I've served on the planning and zoning for Bingham County for 7 years. I'm currently the chairman there. We've seen controversy, and we've seen growth. We've met that, I think, really well with this commission and with the help of our staff. I'm pleased to be a candidate for county commissioner from District 3. I hope to represent you well in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Allman. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here this evening and converse with you folks that are dedicated to finding out the facts and the best candidate to vote for, and so you are to be commended about for doing so. I've likewise grew up here in this county and spent my childhood on a family farm doing chores. It was specifically a dairy farm, so we had chores to do before school and after school. And on Christmas Day, as you know, milking cows does not take a holiday off or a break if the weather is bad, and that has developed a strong work ethic in me, and I still have trouble sleeping in to this day, and I give that attribute to my father that would get us up early every morning and taught us how to work. But I've lived in this community my whole life. I've raised 5 children. I've been married to my lovely wife for 47 years and still happily married, and have enjoyed being a part of this community all of my life. I've thought about the things that I could help with. I've always enjoyed serving others. I get my greatest satisfaction out of service to others, and I've always been an optimist most of my life, and I see a lot of good things going on in our county, and I hope to be able to continue to be able to help those good things progress forward with the help of our community and people like you. We can accomplish those goals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Turns out the rotation for the 2 of you is a lot easier to calculate than the rotation for the 3. So just so you know, if you spoke, you'll be the first to speak on the answer to the question. And here's your first question. In a time when we are seeing a demand for housing, how would you balance and increase residential development against local citizens opposing growth when code allows for it in a specific area?
Growth is a good thing. I know a lot of people in the area would like to have jobs for their children to be able to stay in our area and be able to be around family. When I was growing up, the census was that our children had to move out of the area to find employment. I think one of the economy in Bingham County is such that we have quite a bit of employment. We've got a couple of really neat industries in our area that have had a help wanted sign up for the last 3 years and take applications for people to come and be employed. And these are high-paying jobs that they can stay in our area. Also, with the advent of technology, we're able to live in the place that we want, and our main work spot can be clear across the country in other parts of the country or the world. My daughter-in-law works from her home, but her main place of employment is in San Francisco, and so that's quite an amazing feat. I think the secret is out that we have an ideal place to live here in Bingham County, and we're close proximity to all kinds of outdoor recreation areas and any type of activity that we want to do.
Mr. Allman, same question?
So for 7 years, I've helped other commissioners on our Planning and Zoning Commission balance that very thing, growth with the voice of the neighbors and the citizens of Bingham County. It's a challenge. We have private property rights that are just so sacred to us as Americans, but also we have this essential character of a rural community that we want to preserve and maintain. And I think that that's best done with this Planning and Zoning Commission. These folks represent this community. There's 3 of them from each of the districts in this area, in this county, and they come with unique perspectives. They come with unique backgrounds, but really they're there to represent the people of Bingham County and to represent the voice of the people and the will of the people. When this is done well, we follow the code that's given to us, but also there's a little piece built into that code that says, is this compatible with the existing area or the existing use? And that's the discussion that this commission has, and I think we're really good at it. As a county commissioner, I would like to spend a little bit more time with these commissioners, training them and making sure that they're prepared to balance the code with the voice of the people and the essential character of Bingham County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allman. Now you'll get the first opportunity to answer the question from the local high school student, which is this: how can high school students stay informed about county issues and participate in planning for the future of the community?
So that is a challenge, and everywhere I go, I was just at the Senior Citizen Center today, and these folks over there were just so sad that we don't have a local paper to sort of inform us of what's going on. Of course, we still have the Aberdeen Times out in Aberdeen, and over on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, they still maintain a little newspaper that's just shown Bannock Times, and those inform a really small segment of our population what's going on. And it is hard to know what's going on. You have to be active. You have to look for it. I think as county commissioners, we could do a much better job in working with local media and also with citizens to make sure they know where they can go to look for the answers, to be a part of what's going on. As young kids growing up with a love for America and a love for Idaho and even a love for this community in Bingham County, we somehow have to explain to them that this is a proactive thing that you have to be a part of on your own in a way, and you have to really listen closely to what's going on so that you can be informed, you can look for ways to inform yourself, and then you can act in this county to help sort of shape it and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
There are lots of opportunities for the youth and in our community to participate in different activities. One of the things that I helped with, it's been a few years ago, was called the Bingham Youth Coalition. And for 5 years in a row, I was able to help transport the youth of Bingham County up to a conference in Salt Lake City. And we spent 3 days up there at that conference. And they would bring in all types of trainers, speakers, authors. They had all kinds of videos and different things to teach them about leadership, about how our country works, those types of things. And it was a great opportunity. I've had some of the best experiences that I've had doing that. I've also been involved with the scouting program my whole life. And this, just a month ago, we started teaching the citizenship in the community merit badge and was able to help 15 of our youth learn about their citizenship in the community and those things that it can afford them and the things that they need to do to be a proper citizen of their community and to be encouraged to vote. Thank you.
And third, we have the question from the audience, and we'll start with you, Mr. Jackson.
The question is, how was the advisor question decided? Oh, shouldn't this be a statewide question from Phil McGrain? Oh, the advisory question that is on the ballot that will be, if any of you have had a ballot, a sample ballot, you will notice that there was an advisory question on the ballot added to the ballot, which is an opportunity for commissioners to be able to put that question on the ballot. The question states, I can't remember it word for word, but I believe it states that shall the electors vote in a primary for the next presidential election or a caucus? And that's the question. But the way that was decided, we had the Republican Party in the Bingham County Republican Party bring that to us as commissioners and ask us if we would put that on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allman, I happen to know you don't have a question. You can address that same question if you'd like, or use your time as you see fit.
So I want to talk a little bit about the area of impact legislation that recently passed. It goes into effect on July 1st. It was Senate Bill 1403, and it changes the way that we are, as a county, are going to interact with our cities. And we have until the end of the year to sort of build new boundaries for these cities and a new agreement with them to sort of define the growth that is going to work the very best around these cities. As a Planning and Zoning Commission, we've already begun the process of reaching out to these cities and letting them know that this is going to happen. We're inviting them to come and meet with us and to bring the folks that they feel are best prepared to engage in this negotiation. And we've also tried to explain to them that this is really for their cities. This is a way that they can help the county understand what they need to grow and to develop, and for the county to be a part of that. We're looking forward to these discussions. I really think that we can build into these negotiations a way to incentivize our developers to come closer to our cities and to do the developing and the growth where the services are and where the people are, and that doesn't put as much pressure on our ag lands. And I really look forward to this year and what it's going to do for Bingham County and for our planning department. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now conclude with the 1-minute closing statements, and we'll start with you, Mr. Allman.
So again, just to sort of finish my thought there, another thing that I've noticed on the planning and zoning for the last 7 years is that generally people aren't as bothered by development as they are with the density of the development around them. And I think that we need to look at our RA zone, which really is just a 1 acre minimum. I think we need to develop that RA zone and turn it into a rural preservation zone. We don't need to change the name of it. We just need to change the design of it so that there's a much more leeway in the size of lots that can be allowed in our RA zone. 1 acre close to the cities, and as we go out into the county, further into ag lands, those lots should grow. And I think that would also help the growth in Bingham County, not be so intrusive or bothersome to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson.
I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity that I've had serving this last year and a half in the capacity of your commissioner. I feel like one of my strong attributes is to be able to be a good listener and to be able to have empathy for the problems that are out there in our county and come up with solutions. I've lived my whole life solving problems on a daily basis to help businesses thrive and compete. I also can't believe that it's been a year and a half. I feel like I'm just barely starting to understand the role of a commissioner, and I would hate to turn that over to a new person. You've already had to go through me learning the ropes and trying to figure out what I can do, what I can't do, what I should be doing. And I feel like if we turn that over, it will take another year and a half to accomplish that same things. Thank you.
Join me in thanking these gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay. Again, you may have a seat on the back row or join family or friends in the audience if you'd like. Could I ask the candidates for sheriff to step forward? And I'm going to ask the question, what city and state was the Republican Party formed in? City and state. Anybody know? You know what? I should give you half this, because you got the state right. It's the city of Ripon, Wisconsin. I'll actually even give you this, so you've earned that, okay? Yes. Actually, to even get to Wisconsin is pretty good. Okay? I'll start here first. Okay. We have our candidates for sheriff, and they have drawn lots. Would the person who drew number 1 introduce yourself, please? You have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Sheriff Jeff Gardner, your current Bingham County Sheriff. Tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in Yukon, Idaho, born and raised there. Went to Bonneville High School. From there, I started construction for about 5 years of my adult life. In 1994, I attended ISU Law Enforcement Academy and graduated in the spring of 1995. In August of 1995, I was hired with Bingham County, and from there I've had the opportunity and pleasure to work in the jail facility as a patrolman. I moved out to the patrol. I worked as a patrol sergeant after that, a K-9 handler, and in 2008 I moved on to work for Battelle Energy Alliance out at the INL as a security police officer out there. I did that for 4.5 years. During that time, I spent working as a part-time police officer for the Blackfoot Police Department to maintain my certifications. In 2013, I came back to Bingham County Sheriff's Office as the Chief Deputy. And I spent about 9 years as Chief Deputy, 9.5 years. And the last 2.5 years I've spent as your current Sheriff. I will tell you I'm married to Christy Yancey from the Rose area. We have 4 beautiful children. 1 daughter still in high school. My 3 boys, 2 are in law enforcement, currently working for Bonneville County. And I have 1 son that's an apprentice lineman working out in Iowa currently. I need to tell you that I am confident that I am the candidate with the skill set and the leadership ability to continue to move Bingham County forward and represent the values of this community. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome, my name is Jimmy Barbary. I say Jimmy because otherwise people call me James, but I go by Jim. I was born in Pocatello, and I raised out on a farm out on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation. We own a 20-acre lot of land out there, and I raised children. We lease some of the land to the farmers so Center Pivot can go around and utilize the other 60 acres next to us. I too graduated from ISU law enforcement. I graduated in 1997, so I was just a couple years behind you, Jeff. When I graduated, I tested with Pocatello Police Department, but then I also wanted to go up to where my wife had been currently living, and so we moved up to Seattle. Worked up there for a little while, tested with Everett Police Department, tested for Mukilteo Police Department, got tired of spending $7 a gallon for milk, and when Pocatello offered me a job, I came back. I worked at Pocatello Police Department for 17 years. While I went to school at Idaho State University, I also went and worked in the Bannock County Jail. Once I completed 17 years down here at Pocatello Police Department, I decided to take a change of career. I went back to construction. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time in law enforcement, and it was just time to try doing some other things I wanted to do. Worked in construction, right now I'm driving semi-truck. This morning I woke up in 8 hours from home here and drove home today, so I've only been out of a truck for about an hour and a half. As a working man, I just enjoy getting out and meeting people. Part of my campaign, you probably haven't seen a whole lot of signs, but many of you, if you live out in Springfield or Pingree, I've knocked on your doors, so welcome. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barbary, would you answer the first question from the Central Committee? How would you assess the performance of the Bingham County Sheriff's Department, and if elected, would you keep that same direction or change course? And if you would change course, how would you change it?
So, because I don't have a lot of the insight on the Bingham County Sheriff's Department, I get to see what's posted on Facebook or in local news. I think they've done a hell of a job. I think our county deputies do a great job. I think we've got great citizens here. I think there's always places that we can improve. In my 17 years in law enforcement, I got to serve as a school resource officer for 5 years. Doing that, I got to see, I wasn't in a regular high school, I was in an alternate school, so I was dealing with the more troubled kids. And I found that they always appreciated being held accountable, but not necessarily being punished. And there's a big difference between those two. I respect, every time I see a law enforcement officer, that guy got up this morning, put on a bulletproof vest to go to work. I mean, that's got to settle in for a second. Anybody else know anybody that puts on a vest that they plan on getting shot to go to work? So I totally respect law enforcement. I always have, I always will. I don't know what changes I can make yet. I know community involvement's a big deal, and I'd like to see a little more of that.
Okay, thank you. Same question?
So, moving forward, I'm going to step back in time just a little bit. And what I'd say we've done is we've already done the assessment on what needed to change. And we went through an unprecedented time in Bingham County with our former problems with our former sheriff. And we pulled together, we did hard things, and we came out the other side, and we've been resilient in doing that. We changed leadership and culture at the same time. And we've implemented that. We have this unsaid motto that we go by in the sheriff's office: do what you should do, not what you can do. And by that we mean if you can change behavior with words versus a citation, that's a better option. Moving forward, we are currently working on revamping our DARE program as part of our community engagement. We want to put all uniformed officers that are involved in the schools teaching DARE, and we've reached out to Fort Hall, we've reached out to Blackfoot Police Department, we're already partners with Shelley Police Department, we have an SRO in Aberdeen and Firth and 2 in Snake River, and we're going to continue to change, evaluate what we've been doing, and continue to change and evolve to meet our community needs.
Okay. This is the question from area students. And Mr. Gardner, would you care to answer, how do you intend to foster a positive relationship between law enforcement and the school community, including students, parents, and educators?
Okay, I think I've already touched on that when I mentioned the DARE program. What we have started doing also for all our seniors, we're trying to put on an assembly prior to the end of the year. And that assembly's intention is to educate the seniors that are going out into life on their own. In a sense, it's their first opportunity to leave home and be away from their parents. And the dangers of fentanyl and the pressures that they and the challenges they face when they attend college or move on into the workforce are probably pressures they've never seen or experienced. We want to give them that little piece of education that maybe they will understand they need to not make that decision to partake in drugs or alcohol or whatever it might be. Also, we want to reach out to the schools, and we just started a program with job fairs. And so we're going to plan on hosting our own job fairs in every school in the county. So that's part of what our plan is. There again, I think getting SROs in every school has been crucial, and we worked hard with that. Aberdeen hasn't had an SRO probably for 15 years, and the one they had was a disaster, but we are receiving raving reviews from the community, the school district, and the students for having that done. I think that's been quite an accomplishment for us as a sheriff's office. Thank you.
Mr. Barbary, same question.
Awesome. I enjoyed working with high school students. I really do. I think one thing that I would do is I appreciate the school resource officer program. I think it could be improved always. As a sheriff, I would love to step in and visit with youth more often. Be able to walk into a civics class and do a question and answer time. I mean, explain to them that, frankly, the sheriff is the only law enforcement officer that answers to the people, not to a boss. I mean, the people are the boss. And for the youth in the programs to understand that, you know, if you've got a question for law enforcement, take it to the guy that is going to answer the question for you. I think there's some programs we could start up that would help them understand the importance of voting. Jumping out there and getting to know the people in their neighborhoods and the importance of shaking hands with people. Again, my concept of shaking people's hands and knocking on their doors has been very beneficial for me. And I think as the youth see that example in their community, they're going to step up to it. I also see some opportunities we could do volunteering programs with the youth, helping them to look at other people that need service versus just looking in their mirror.
Okay, thank you. As it turns out, the audience had no questions for either of you, so we'll proceed right now to your closing 1 minute, and we'll start with you, Mr. Gardner.
Okay. I'd like to say that, start off with, we need the public's trust, and that is our mission. Your trust is our mission at the sheriff's office. That mantle of trust that's bestowed upon the sheriff by being elected by the people is the most valuable thing we possess. We represent the people first, our agency second, and then our employees third. And you can't have success without all three of those, and you can't sacrifice any of those for the others. It's my goal and mission to gain that trust for anybody that doesn't have it. I believe there are plenty that do, and I want to bolster that trust through community engagement and community programs. And thank you.
Mr. Barbary?
I appreciate the opportunity we've had here tonight. What's terrible about sitting up here is it's awful bright, and I know there's people out there, but I can't see you real well. I love my community. Like I said, I live out in Fort Hall, and when I say my neighbors, if you come and see me and I say, yeah, he's my neighbor, that could be he lives 3 or 4 miles away from me. We know that because in the communities we live in, your neighbors are whoever's close enough that when the snow starts flying might come and help you dig out. I enjoy the community I live in. My neighbors know me. I think most of them like me. I don't know for sure. But I would be thrilled to present or represent our county as the sheriff, and I'd ask for your vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, these two are willing to run towards danger when you run away from it, so please join me. And all of our candidates for county position, you may now have seats in the audience. I believe we have a few minutes for an intermission right now, and we'll begin at 7:35 with the candidates for legislative office. During intermission, I want to give away some more malt balls. So, as you all know, political parties have platforms. I will give a package of malt balls the very first Republican platform, the platform of John C. Fremont, there were only 3 items on that platform. I will give you a box of malt balls if you can name 2 of the 3. 2 of the 3 things on the very first Republican platform. Anybody want to try? Okay, anti-slavery was one. Anti-polygamy was not, although it was an issue. Jessie Fremont, his wife, was the one who introduced that, and she said, we need to save America from the 2, what did she call them? The 2 pagan beliefs in slavery and polygamy. That was her platform. It was Jessie Fremont's platform. But no, it did not make it onto the official Republican platform adopted in Ripon, Wisconsin. So one of them is slavery. That's the reason, by the way, I said 2, is because I kind of guessed you'd all guess slavery. So does anybody know what the other 2 were? One of the other 2. Low taxes? You'd think so, but it turns out at that time, it wasn't that Republicans were for high taxes, it's that back then, even the Democrats were for low taxes. So that didn't make it on the platform. Popular sovereignty, they were close. Let me give you a hint. Half this audience should really care a lot about this platform issue. Exactly. Who said suffrage first? Suffrage for whom? Suffrage for women. Okay, very good. Representative, did anybody get that before Representative Cannon did? I will give you, because that was it. You wouldn't guess that, but actually, Republicans were endorsing the women's vote. Do you know how many years before Democrats came around to support women voting? 50 years before. Half a century before Democrats supported women voting, Republicans were supporting women voting. So. Could the candidates for legislative seats please come forward and have seats up here on the stage? Could we get all candidates for the legislature to come forward? And that'll just make the transition a little faster if you don't have to come up on stage in between. Representative, go ahead and have a seat. So on the hot seat will be Mr. I'm waving for anybody who is thinking we'll start at 7:35 because we're ready to go. Again, welcome to citizens of Bingham County. We're here to hear from those who wish to offer their services on our behalf. The first panels were all Bingham County candidates. These individuals are willing to actually take time to uproot from their home here and go all the way over to Boise, which, believe me, is a significant sacrifice. Because, as you heard, Bingham County is God's country and Ada County is not. But our first candidates are seeking the position of representative from this legislative district for House Seat A. And again, the rules are you'll go in the order in which you pick, and then we'll again have a series of 3 questions, and you'll alternate the order in which you answer those questions, and then we'll conclude with a 1-minute closing that will be back in the same order in which you did your opening statements, okay? They have drawn by lot, and Mr. Cannon, would you begin?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. My name is Representative David Cannon. Before I start, I want to give a shout out to my wife, Lisa, who's here with me. Today is a fulfillment of her dream. I don't know how many times she said, I want to spend my 32nd wedding anniversary at a legislative forum. And somehow, some way, I pulled that off, and here we are. So shout out to you, Lisa. Love you. I grew up in Blackfoot, Idaho. I grew up in a construction family, and the seeds of my political views and the seeds of my interest in politics were sown around the Cannon family dinner table. Mine was a family that was unusual in that we ate dinner together always, and we generally talked about, of all things, politics. And that was a blessing to me, and again, it kind of laid the foundation for a lot of the views that I have. One thing that I remember that my dad would commonly say is something to the effect of, here's what I expect, here's what I want from my government. I want it to keep me and my family safe. I want it to provide some infrastructure, some roads, some bridges, that kind of thing to help me and my stuff get from point A to point B, and I want it to stay out of my way. And that resonates with me. One of the key things that I think that I try to do is to focus on what the true role of government is. I want to rein in big government. I want to prevent Idaho from following the path of the federal government and our liberal state neighbors, and I want to keep Idaho small and limited in terms of its government. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Sorensen.
Yes, let me just start by thanking everyone for coming out tonight. I know that it is a sacrifice, especially Trent for making a pretty significant drive. We appreciate you coming. And part of my thunder was stolen. I actually was going to wish a happy anniversary to the Cannons. But let me just tell you, my name is Josh Sorensen. And I started my career as an educator, and once I left education, I actually never left it because I now serve as the chairman of the Snake River School Board. And honestly, that's kind of what spurs why I'm running. I would like to see better support of our education from our legislators. And so that is one of the reasons. Another reason why I'm running is because I believe one of the most significant problems we face as a nation is actually the southern border and the illegal drugs and other things that come as a result of that. I've seen a consistent vote against safe communities, in my opinion, with some of the mandatory minimums, arguing against fentanyl. Like, these types of things are what caused me to want to run. I'm also pretty disappointed in taking away local controls with the library bill. I do believe that we have library boards for a reason, and I believe we need to use due process a little bit more effectively when someone has an issue with a piece of literature within the library. It doesn't make sense to me to have a library where we have an adult section. That just doesn't ring true. It seems like we should be able to solve these problems that, in my personal opinion, are actually Ada County and Boise problems there, and let us solve our problems here. And with that, I would like to thank you all again for coming, and my time's up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sorensen. Would you be willing to answer our first question then that comes from the Central Committee? That question is, given Idaho's reliance on water for agriculture, recreation, and urban use, what specific policies and initiatives do you propose to ensure sustainable water management, especially in light of potential challenges such as drought and increasing demand?
So the water issue is an interesting issue and extremely complex, if I'm being honest with you. We have a scenario right now where we have an agreement, and in that agreement it specifically says first time in, first time out, but it also has an element that specifically talks about beneficial use. And I think it's unfortunate that right now the way that the water is managed is very heavily weighted on the time factor, and it doesn't look as much at the beneficial use factor. I believe that we could make some policy changes and some management changes that can change that. One of the things that I would like to potentially see and would advocate for is changing the way we do water calls so that if we are going to have a curtailment, that the organizations that make that water call have to show that they've made improvements on their systems prior to making that call. And if they haven't made improvements on their systems to conserve water, then they won't be able to make that call. That would be one example of what I would suggest we could do to improve our water situation. And the reality is, water is the lifeblood of Bingham County's economy. Agriculture is our backbone, and we absolutely need to have the water, so we need to do what we can to make the water stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cannon, same question.
Thank you. So When I was in college, I studied economics at BYU. Economics is the study of scarcity, in essence. Water has become scarce. It wasn't scarce before, and it's only going to become scarcer. So it's a super important issue to wrap our heads around and to improve the situation and to solve the problem. I don't think there's an immediate solution in sight, but it's something that we're going to work on so that we aren't in a position that when we run out of water, we haven't done the legwork and we aren't prepared with some solutions. Water is, like other things, subject to the laws of supply and demand. We can't really literally increase the supply of water, and the demand for water is, as Idaho grows, going to just increase more and more. But we can affect the supply of water if we focus on efficiency. And when I say efficiency, I'm talking about the efficiency of saving as much water as possible and not losing water and not wasting water as it moves from point A to point B. Those should be our focuses, as well as smart growth that isn't out of control. Thanks.
Okay. The next question comes from local area students, and it will be for you, Mr. Cannon. What is your vision for the future of public education in our state, and what is your plan to ensure adequate funding for public education?
Thank you. That's a great question. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about my personal journey as far as education goes. I had a great week last week. My wife and I went to Provo, and last week on Thursday and Friday, we saw on back-to-back days our daughter graduate from law school and our son graduate from BYU in economics. And that represented, at the conclusion of that two-day period, for the first time in more than 25 years, we don't have students in our household. And that's kind of a somber thought. Education has been super important to us. All of our kids went through the public schools at Blackfoot. They graduated. All of them are now college graduates. My vision for the future of public education, and by the way, in the last 4 years while I've been in the legislature, we've made historic increases to the funding of public education, especially with regard to teacher compensation, and we've made historic increases to the school facilities funding. We've done a lot. Now, what else can we do? We've got to bring in some additional market-driven tools like competition that will benefit students. Nobody benefits other than the administrators and teachers from monopoly-type approach to education. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sorensen, same question.
So this particular question is something that I'm pretty passionate about. As I already mentioned my history in education, I actually, I still to this day spend a lot of time in classrooms working with students. I believe my vision for education is to make sure we are investing in our future. I believe that our number one resource that we have in Idaho is actually our youth. And I also believe that we are shortchanging them in some areas. Two of the things that I would like to specifically point out, first of all, is we have made some pretty substantial progress in making sure we're compensating our teachers adequately. However, what we have missed is our classified staff. We have paraprofessionals and other classified staff that are working for very low wages, and our reimbursement rate for the state is such that school districts like Snake River actually have to pay additional money beyond what is allotted to us in order to keep our classified staff. So I'd like to see that change. The other thing is we've got some lessons learned from COVID-19. We learned that if you're sick, you need to stay home. Why are we penalizing schools for using that lesson and having kids stay home and not spread germs by still using average daily attendance? This particular policy was set up like 70 years ago. Let's figure out a way to actually adapt to current schools and where they are right now.
Thank you. Mr. Sorensen, if you wouldn't mind, would you take the box labeled Sorensen there? And we'll now move to questions from the audience. And if you'll take out a question and answer it.
Okay. Do you intend on joining any special groups on caucuses if elected? So my intention, A, is to get elected. I'm really working as hard as I possibly can. I really feel like this is probably specifically pointed at maybe joining like the IFF or maybe joining like Main Street. I have no intentions of joining either of those at this point. My intention is to go to Boise and start really looking at how we can better serve our students. It's an issue that I mentioned right from the get-go. Education is my number one intention, and I want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for our students. Another goal that I actually have is to make sure that we maintain the local control. And I know I've mentioned that before, but as a school board member, I feel like I've been elected by the people that I serve to make decisions on behalf of the schools. Having heavy-handed state government regulations come down and tell me exactly how to do certain things, that's not the way I think our conservative principles are designed. That's not a Republican principle or a conservative principle. And so I want to make it so that we have more opportunities for businesses, for schools, for other people to be successful without the heavy hand of Boise government coming in to interfere.
Thank you. Mr. Cannon, would you remove a question from your box?
My question says, what is the role of the Rev and Tax Chair? How can being a chairman help Idaho? Thank you for the question. So just by way of background, I started this last session in Boise as the vice chairman of the House Revenue and Taxation Committee. Midway through the session, we had a vacancy in our House Republican leadership. The majority leader was axed, if you will, with a vote of no confidence, and the Rev and Tax Chairman became the majority leader, which left a vacancy in the Rev and Tax Chairman seat. And I filled that seat, and I've been acting as the Rev and Tax Chair ever since. The role of the chairman is to guide the committee, and the chairman has some ability to guide and act as what I call a gatekeeper in terms of what legislation moves forward. So I've been super excited because I am a limited government guy, and being the chairman of the Rev and Tax Committee gives me a platform where I can be the gatekeeper to see legislation, and if it grows government in a way that is outside the traditional scope of government, it's going to stay in my drawer. If it grows government in a way that bloats government like the federal government or like our liberal neighbors, it's going to stay in my drawer. And I think sometimes what is left undone is just as important as what is done. Thanks.
Okay, that completes the questions from the audience. We'll now have the 1-minute closing statements. And Mr. Cannon, would you begin with your 1-minute closing?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Going back to my intro, the role of government, and I tie that into the American dream. My dad, who I quoted in terms of saying what he wanted from government, had a dream, and his dream was along the lines of being an entrepreneur. He had a construction company. One day he was on a plane ride. This is about the time I graduated high school, and he sat next to a gentleman by the name of T.C. Taylor, who had just bought the salvage rights to the Salt Lake train trestle. And by the time the plane landed, my dad and T.C. Taylor were partners in reclaimed wood and reclaimed wood pioneers. That's an example of the American dream, and what I want to see is more people embrace this idea of I can do it if people stay out of my way and there is not bureaucracy, instead of having a dream where it's how much can the government give me? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join me in applause for these two candidates.
Did you get your closing argument?
If you wouldn't mind having a seat, or you can join. Oh, I'm sorry, you need your response. Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay, Trent. I'm easily forgotten.
Yeah.
I just want to say, again, thank you for everyone for coming out. And I want to just reiterate that my fundamental principles are education, which I think I've hammered quite thoroughly, but I also believe in safe communities. So much so that I've actually received the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police, and usually that's not something that they give to someone who's challenging an incumbent. However, they gave that to me really because it really boils down to my opponent's voting record. I also want to just point out that I really believe that we need to, as a state, work on decreasing taxes. And I was pretty disappointed that my opponent specifically introduced a piece of legislation that introduced a tax or expanded on a tax that goes to ratepayers for all energy companies. So that's all I have to say. I would appreciate your vote.
Okay, thank you. And please now do join me in applause for our two candidates. And as I said, you may have a seat in the audience if you'd like, or you may join us on the back row. Could we have the two candidates for House Seat B come forward? Do we have time for a trivia question? Okay. The Republican Party formed in Ripon, Wisconsin was made up of actually 3 parties who didn't like where their party had been, and they wanted a new one. One of those 3 was the Whig Party. Name one of the other 2. The Tory Party? No? No? It's interesting you mentioned the Know-Nothings. The Know-Nothing was the party that's the reason John C. Fremont lost. But no, it wasn't the Know-Nothing Party. The Mold Mooses? No, that was much later with Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, well, I'll just tell you and then I'll keep the whoppers myself. It was the Free Soil Party, and I mentioned those were the folks that supported the Nebraska Lands Act. They wanted all the homesteaded land in the West to only be homesteaded if it was a free state, no slavery, working the new farms on the homesteaded land. So that was the Free Soil Party. And then, a lot of people don't know this, the anti-slavery Democrats. The anti-slavery Democrats split off from the Democratic Party and helped to form the Republican Party. So anyway, now I need to give you an opportunity. Just shuffle these up really good. Okay. By draw of lots, Representative Young, will you go first with your introduction? 2 minutes.
Certainly. Thank you, Trent, and thank you all for the chance to be here tonight. I struggled a little with the decision to come because my dad, who many of you know, Dr. Richard Hill, is currently in the ICU at Ermac, fighting for his life with a rare form of cancer that was just diagnosed a week ago. But my dad is one of the reasons that I serve, and so I wanted to be here tonight in part to honor what he has taught me. I remember my dad always loving Scouts, and just a week and a half ago, as he became increasingly ill, he conducted a board of review from his armchair in our living room because his boys needed it. I remember him as a family doctor when I was a girl, answering the phone during dinner time and all hours of the day and night because he was never too busy to help someone in need. My mom has been no different. I remember when funding was cut to the schools, and my mom joined with Bonnie Egbert and many other members of our community to ensure that athletics and the arts would remain a part of our public school system and of our community. My parents have taught me to love my enemies, to do good to them that hate me, and to always stand up for what is right. I've chosen to serve our community in part because of their example. even at great personal cost, and because I felt called to make a difference and believed that I was prepared to do so. I want you to know that I am one of the hardest working legislators in Boise, that I have a gift for loving people, including those who may disagree with me, and that gift is the reason that I have been so effective in your service. I want you to know that I vote my principles and that my vote means something. I look forward to the opportunity tonight to speak for my own record so that you can hear for yourselves who I really am and what I have been privileged to do in your service.
Okay, thank you.
Well, first off, Julianne, may I offer my prayers for you and your family. I admire you for your courage to come tonight with that going on. So thank you for being here and being able to participate in this process. My name is Ben Furman. I am running for the Idaho House seat 30B, and I am doing so because I feel like we need a change. I grew up in the Idaho Falls area. I was born and raised here. I've gone back in my genealogy and actually discovered that on my dad's side, I can go back 6 generations, and on my mom's side, I can go back 7. So it's been fun to learn how rooted I am in Idaho and how much Idaho blood runs through me. My grandpa's brother was Tom Campbell, mayor of Idaho Falls. My grandpa was the interim chief of police for a while, and my dad was the mayor of Ammon, Steve Furman. So politics has been something in our household that I've known and grown to love. What I love about it is the ability to serve. As an Eagle Scout, as a member of the church where I served a mission in Brazil, I've always looked for opportunities to serve and to help others. I try very hard to think about what other people need and try to fill that need, which I guess comes from my desire to be a problem solver. When I look at what's happening in Boise and with our current legislature, I see that we're sometimes creating solutions to problems that don't exist. And we are taking the smallest thing that may be able to be controlled by local control, and we're trying to find a Boise solution for it. And I want my children, the 4 of them, to grow up in the Idaho that I grew up in, where they can walk down to the park and not worry, where they can leave their car unlocked and not worry, where they can just live and enjoy this great state that we have. And I'm running so that I can try to make sure that that happens and that the Idaho I love continues to be the Idaho that we all love.
Okay, Mr. Furman, would you mind answering the first question? It is, Idaho has seen debates over education funding, including the implementation of school choice measures and the Launch Grant program. How do you envision striking a balance between school choice initiatives and investing in public education, particularly in rural areas where options might be limited?
I think it's important to realize that we have a lot of school choice in Idaho already. Students can attend any school they choose to, as long as that school has room for them, which is sometimes a problem. But they do have the choice to do that. They can also stay home and be homeschooled. My wife and I homeschooled our 4 children for a little while. We're currently homeschooling our last child. Children can go to private schools. They have a lot of school choice. I also think it's important we remember that our Constitution says that it is our responsibility to fund a free and public education. So my priority in education is to focus on our public schools and make sure that our public schools have the funding and that they're empowered to do what they do best, which is to teach. I would love for them to become more competitive, and I would love to empower them to be able to do that. I don't want to see our tax dollars going to fund private schools, private religious schools in Boise. So I will fight to make sure that our public schools are better treated, more empowered, and have the tools that they need to teach our children.
Okay, thank you. Representative Young, that's a long question. Do you need it read again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Idaho has seen debates over education funding, including the implementation of school choice measures and the Launch Grant program. How do you envision striking a balance between school choice initiatives and investing in public education, particularly in rural areas where options might be limited?
So let me start out by saying that my mom was a teacher, my mother-in-law was a teacher. All I ever wanted to be was a teacher. I have a bachelor's degree in education, and I am a strong supporter of public education, contrary to the claims of some. As I said at the beginning, My record speaks for itself, and my vote means something. Since I've been elected, I've consistently supported K-12 budgets and historic increases in teacher salaries. Just this year, we've had a 3.9% increase in public education funding, even with fewer students in classrooms, a 20% increase in discretionary funding, almost a 1,700% increase in school facility funding. In addition to that, last year, we saw $170 million in new funding for teacher salaries, $100 million in new funding for classified staff, which were mentioned earlier. So that's our bus drivers, janitors, librarians, lunch ladies, et cetera. $180 million for insurance benefits. The list goes on. I have consistently supported sending state resources to ensure that every student has an opportunity to have a quality education in our public school system. I want that quality education to be responsive to the needs of students and the concerns of parents, and I've also worked to that end, and I believe that it is not a difficult thing to meet those needs.
Okay. Representative Young, this is the first question from the local high school students. It is also on the topic of education, so you'll have an opportunity to really expand your views on education. What advice do you have for students who are concerned about the future of public education?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is you don't need to worry. We're in good hands. I see bright, capable students growing up to be tomorrow's teachers and tomorrow's administrators, and I see committed communities working hard to make sure that things happen. As I mentioned, I remember my mom pulling together with our community to ensure that athletics and the arts remain part of what we do. Sometimes education shifts its focus. Lately, we've had a huge shift toward career tech education. I think that's a great thing. And I believe that as we move forward, our communities and our educators will continue to adjust to the needs of our students and recognize those coming future needs. So don't worry, that's my message. Just study hard and do your best to serve wherever you are, and it's going to be okay.
Mr. Furman.
So for the last 2 years, the legislature has tried to pass a bill that would take dollars out of the public school education system and give it to people who are trying to go to private schools or already going to private schools. It costs $10,000 to $15,000 to go to Bishop Kelly in Boise, and it's sending $5,000 in tax credits to a family who's already going to that expensive of a school does not help our current public schools. I would tell this student that your vote matters. Who you vote for matters. And we can do all kinds of things to claim that we are really helping our schools, but right now our teachers are struggling, our aides are struggling. In Shelley, the aides and bus drivers are paid between $9 and $11 an hour. While the teachers continue to get pay raises, which I support and is good, we're not helping the rest of those who support our education. So I would tell that student to reach out to your teachers and appreciate them more, and the lunch lady and the bus driver for what they do, and your vote matters. I also think that it's important to understand that while we've been focusing on merit-based education, it's focusing too much on tests and teachers who are teaching towards tests so that they can get their bonuses or they can get additional pay. And we need to really look at our education system and what is best for students and helping them prepare for higher education and the workforce through programs like Launch and other programs that are important for them to have opportunities, and empowering those school boards and school districts and teachers to do just that.
Okay, thank you very much. That completes the questions from the students. Mr. Furman, if you wouldn't mind taking out the question that's from the audience in a box in front of you.
It says, do you like the library bill?
Do you like the library bill?
The library bill is perhaps the reason that I got in this race. My mother-in-law is Kayleen Christensen, and she's the librarian of the North Bingham County District Library, the Shelley Library. And I've seen in the last 3 years our current legislators passing and promoting a bill that takes away the local control of library boards and librarians. This last year, there were 6 different iterations of this library bill that went through the legislature, and it was eventually watered down so much that everybody said, fine, just get it over with. all in an attempt to try to keep harmful materials out of children's hands. The problem with this bill is it doesn't do that. It simply tells a librarian you have to move the book from here to there, and it doesn't define really what is harmful. Harmful material could be the movie Titanic because there's some nudity. We're taking away people's free agency and their choices. We need to trust our local elected board members, like our school board members who hire our principals and superintendents, and our library boards who hire our librarians to do what is best in our communities. Maybe there are problems in a library in Boise, but those problems don't exist. And it's frustrating to me that my mother-in-law said she never got a single phone call from either of the legislators that are here today about how do you feel about this bill and what should we do and do you like it? Never. She had to reach out to them and invite them to her library so she could show them why it wasn't an issue.
Okay, your time is up. Same thing, Representative Young, would you withdraw a question from the box there?
Okay, the question is, how do you feel about vouchers? I'm not a super big fan of vouchers, honestly. I have been more of a fan of something like a tax credit because I think that there's better accountability. But I'd like to actually let that answer be very short, if I may, and I would like to speak briefly to the library bill because some of what you were told just now was not true, and if that's the reason for getting into a race, you ought to know the truth about the issue. The definition of harmful to minors includes 3 specific prongs. It has to include explicit sexual content, it has to be intended to be sexually arousing, and in addition to that, it has to be patently offensive to the prevailing standard in the community in terms of what's acceptable for children. It has to meet all 3 of those standards to be considered harmful to minors. The bill that was passed prohibited that kind of material from being placed in sections available to minors. It did require the material to be moved. I also would like to say that I spent hours specifically with the individual that was named discussing this bill. I reached out when she had an alternative version. I saw that it got to the individual sponsoring the library bill, and I think that I, like my opponent, want to see my kids grow up in the Idaho that I love. I want them to not only be able to go to the park and down the street and be safe, I want them to be able to go to the library and have a wonderful experience without being confronted by graphic, explicit, harmful sexual content.
Okay, we'll now begin with the closing statements, and we'll start with you, Representative Young.
Thank you, Trent. I want you to know that I've earned the Friend of Farm Bureau Award every term that I've served, the Award of Conservative Excellence from the ACU. I've been endorsed by Idaho Chooses Life, the NRA, and Moms for America. But I want you to know that because I have served you, the growth in state spending has been reined in and you pay lower property taxes. Because I've served you, life is more secure in the state of Idaho, and thousands of babies are alive today who would never have been born. That Idaho schools are better funded and teachers have access to state insurance. Second Amendment rights are more secure because I passed constitutional carry expansion. Elections are more secure because I passed the post-election audit hand count. Small businesses and schools were open during COVID in part because of my work on the Liability Immunity Act. Bathrooms and athletics are safer for women because we have a definition of male and female. Your youth have better access to mental health care via telehealth, and counselors are able to practice their profession consistent with their conscience because of my work. The family is more secure in the state of Idaho because of the ways that I have been privileged to serve you, and I ask for your continued support on May 21st.
Mr. Furman.
Thank you. I want to express my deep love for this state and for my family, for my wife, and for everything that it has provided for me, the opportunity that I have because Idaho sticks to conservative values and treats people like people. I've been very disappointed in the legislation in the last few years that has tried to ostracize people who don't agree or who are different. I feel like that's not Idaho. I want very much to be a problem-solving, solution-oriented person who will work with all groups to find things that make sense, to look for ways that we can save money on fees and that we can be more intelligent and smarter with the way that our taxes work. Somebody who can ask the questions that nobody else is asking. For example, We pay our school teachers out of the general budget. We don't pay our police force. Why not? Why is it that a policeman is paid so little when they're the ones that are supporting and protecting us on a day-to-day basis? We need to really look at the problems of Idaho and not try to focus on so many cultural and social issues. And that's what I plan to do if I get to Boise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Please join me in applause and appreciation for our two candidates for this House seat. Thank you. Could we have our Senate candidates come forward? And I'll do one more trivia. Who named the Republican Party? That should be a simple one. Who named the Republican Party? As you heard, they had the anti-slavery Democrats joined with the Free Soil Party and the Whig Party. Who said, let's call it the Republican Party? Who said that? In fact, he said that. Let's call it the Republican Party, just like that. He blurted that out and it kind of stuck and people went with it. Kind of a famous character in American history. Wasn't Abraham Lincoln? It was someone who endorsed Abraham Lincoln very strongly. Interestingly enough, Jefferson was the one guy who didn't like Republican. He joined the Democratic Republican Party. His friend Madison said, drop that Democrat. Remember, Madison didn't like pure democracy. So Madison always called their party the Republican Party, and Jefferson was the one who said, no, let's call it the Democratic Republican Party. So Jefferson was a Republican, but he kind of liked to throw that Democrat on there. James Madison was the one who named his first party Republican, but it wasn't this party. Okay, I'll give you another hint. He was the publisher of the New York Tribune. Anybody know who that was? Okay, again, I get it. I guess I get it. Horace Greeley. Horace Greeley named the Republican Party. Yeah. Okay, candidates for Senate. Okay, I'm going to shuffle these around. Do you mind if I let her go first? Okay.
That's what a gentleman would do.
First, Trent.
Okay.
2.
Okay. With 2 minutes for an introduction, we'll start with you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. And I thank you for the Central Committee for doing this for us this evening. I'm Senator Julie Van Orden. I grew up on a farm in Bingham County. I graduated from Blackfoot High School. I married Garth Van Orden. We have 4 children, 3 grandchildren, and 1 great-granddaughter. We started our own farm, Garth and I did, after he had farmed with his brothers for a time. Then we diversified our farming operation so that we could market our own crops during hard times. And so now we are also partners in an irrigation equipment business in Bingham County and beyond. I have a combined 9 years of experience in the Idaho legislature. I was on the Education Committee, Agriculture Committee, Health and Welfare Committee, and the Joint Finance and Appropriation Committee setting state budgets. My other activities that I'm involved in is I am on the board of the Idaho Youth Ranch. And I participated in a $30 million capital campaign to build a youth residential facility in the state of Idaho to help youth in our state. I also last summer co-chaired a task force that looked at addressing Medicaid cost containment in the state of Idaho and focused on Medicaid management care for Idahoans, for all Idahoans. I've also been involved with the Idaho Charter School Commission, and I also served on the Idaho Potato Commission. I love serving Bingham County, and now with Butte County involved with us, that is they have their challenges out there, but it's been fun to get to know them and listen to their challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bingham.
Thank you. My name's Jerry Bingham. I was born in Bingham County, raised and grown up here my whole life, been on a farm, raised on a farm. I lucked out and married my treasurer, Valerie Bingham Hawker, and we've got 5 boys and 1 girl. And they all live, we see each other at church, except one boy, he lives all the way in the Moreland, and I hear he's still going to church every Sunday, so all's well at the Bingham place. I started out young as a farmer. My parents, my dad and my 2 brothers got killed in a plane crash, and the farm kind of was up, and the bank took it back, and I was able to, with a little bit of equipment that was mostly junk, able to get a loan and start out farming, rent it from the bank for a couple of years, and slowly was able to buy it back. And my proudest accomplishment is my family. And I want this place to be the same good place that I was able to raise my family in, that everybody else has that chance to raise their family. And I can see that there's changes and it's coming, and if we don't watch out for changes, it's like 2 years ago, I was the only one arguing about the water. Nobody else wanted to talk about the water when I was running, and I could see it was a big issue coming down the road. I think now, with the water issue is all up front, there's ways to accomplish it that everybody keeps their water. And I'm out of time. It's a long decision, but on how to solve the problem, but I'm willing and wanting to solve the problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bingham, here's the first question for you. Libraries play a vital role in communities offering resources beyond books, including internet access, educational programs, and support services. Considering the diverse needs of Idahoans, how do you plan to ensure continued funding and support for public libraries, especially in underserved areas amidst competing priorities and social issues?
Well, I think the way it's set up right now is your property tax funds the libraries. And in a rural area, it might be a problem to have a good library, but with technology and Google, I don't see the problem as bad as it used to be in rural area, that you got the internet, it's provided everywhere, and you can look up what I used to have to look up in an encyclopedia to do my homework. You can use it on your computer or your phone, and I think that's great, and libraries are good for my grandkids. Go listen to stories that are read during the summer, and they really love it. And I don't understand the problem with this law that was passed, that you don't even have to have sexual explicit material in a library. There's no law saying that they have to accept it. So why do they even let it in? I don't think it's in any of our libraries now, but we're in a state where a lot of people from Boise and that's moving into this area, and it could happen. So I think we ought to just keep it as clean as possible, because the ages between 4 and 8 is, I was told when I was on the school board, is the fastest development of a child's brain. And what they see at that point in time, you're going to have a hard time getting rid of.
Okay. Senator, it's a long question. Do you need it read again?
Please.
Okay. Libraries play a vital role in communities offering resources beyond books, including internet access, educational programs, and support services. Considering the diverse needs of Idahoans, how do you plan to ensure continued funding and support for public libraries, especially in underserved areas amidst competing priorities and social issues?
Thank you. When I was on the Snake River School Board, I had the opportunity to serve on the Snake River Community School Library Board. It opened my eyes to a lot of what went on in the libraries and the funding mechanisms that funded those. So I felt like it was pretty important for the local taxpayers to know about that and know that when you do pay your property taxes, that a certain amount of those go to the libraries. I was out recently in Arco, and they have a community library right there on Main Street, and it's very small. And so for those small rural communities, I think those libraries are very vital, and to keep them going and to have a lot of resources for them. I also went up to the library in Shelley and visited with a librarian up there about what she gave her patrons access to and the methods she gave them access to. And also I visited with the librarians out here in Snake River of how they access materials for their library. And I find it very comforting to know that we live in a great community, that the librarians are careful of what is in their libraries and how children and young adults access those materials. And I think it's very important to keep that local control.
Okay. Senator Van Orden, this is the question from the local high school student. How do you plan to work with educators and school administrators to develop and implement education policies that best serve the needs of students and schools?
One of the things that in working on the budgets and the education budgets I feel is important. And as I've worked on those these last years, being in the legislature, it's become evident to me that we need to make sure that our funding is not being given out on an antiquated kind of system, which is in place right now. Looking at a new funding formula for our schools, I think will help in supporting them. And the new funding formulas, the discussions that I've been in, they focus on the students and what they need in the classrooms. So going forward, looking at a new funding formula that addresses the needs of the students and their disabilities if they have them, their needs if they have them, and if they are mainstream students, getting them the advanced supports that they need in those classrooms. So I think moving towards a different funding formula that addresses students' needs, both high and low, will be the wave of the future and what goes in supporting our schools.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bingham, how do you plan to work with educators and school administrators to develop and implement education policies that best serve students and schools?
Okay, when I was on the school board also, we had back then a teacher that taught how to build a house. And you could enroll in that class and get credits for it. And this school district would build a house every year and then turn around and be able to move it on blocks and sell it. And it was a moneymaker. Plus, it was something that benefited every student that left from that class, knew how to build something, and maybe even one day build their own house. Another department that was lost was the drafting program. We had a guy by Mr. Bang, and when the students left this school from learning how to go through his class and learning how to draft, they were hired at Sputnik immediately, and they got to skip in college because they were so well taught in high school. That part of this education system is just gone, and I'm really sad to see that is something that needs to be implemented to get somebody, if you have to pay them more, that's a draftsman to come back and teach, or get some retired teacher that's willing to do that, to further the education more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's good.
And then the last question will be the one submitted by the audience. And if Mr. Bingham, if you'd start with the question that's in your box.
What are my plans for education? I think I'm going to drop out. I'm done. I'm not going to go to college either, but if you're meaning for kids, it's very important. One thing, all my kids came to Snake River. I had 2 graduate from Pocatello because when I was on the school board, I created some problems for administrators, and some teachers took it out on my kids, so they just went down the road where they were safe. But most 90% of them are good, and they got a good education from both schools. I'd like to see charter schools that we had in Pingree still flourishing. It was upsetting to me that we approved that charter school when I was on the school board, and it was against our administrator's wishes, and she was very upset that night when we approved the charter. Also, when I was gone, Julie was part of that board, and she would report back any problems they were having, and it did fail. I thought it was a good thing to have because we could have raised enough money. There would have been no activity fees or sports fees. It was a way to bring in money renting a building that we didn't need. And I was sad to see it go, but they lost their funding for it. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Senator Van Orden.
Are you a member of the Main Street, Idaho, and are you being supported by them in any way? Yes, I am a member of the Main Street Caucus. I joined them because I had worked with a number of legislators in Southeast Idaho the year before, and we had met on a regular basis and talked about legislation that was coming. We didn't vote as a block. It was a place for me to go and get information. And so when I had a chance to join the Main Street Caucus and join legislators more than just in Southeast Idaho, ones from around the state, in talking about legislation, if we had questions on it, we'd be able to go to that group as they met every so often. And so to be able to just get information from those groups was important to me. And I felt like we could ask questions that were pretty important, but there was no trying to get somebody to vote for your legislation. It was just a place to gather and give information out to each other. Am I being supported in them in any way? No, I'm not.
Okay. Does that complete your answer?
Yes.
Okay, now it's time for our 1 minute closing statements, and we'll start with you, Senator Van Orden.
Thank you. You know, there are some water issues in our state, and I think it's an issue that we cannot back down from at this time. I think we don't have a water supply issue, we have a water management issue in this state. And I think it's important that we go and hit it head on. I am in support of dissolving the 2015-2016 water settlement agreement that came into play. I believe that water management in a different way needs to happen in our state. I believe we do have to address beneficial use. And the beneficial use of that kind of resource is something that a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on. But I think a number of us started this last year in the legislature. Our current legislators put forth a resolution that addressed looking at what it would take. Thank you. And I ask you to go vote on May 21st. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bingham.
Yeah, I'll kind of end on the water thing too issue. There is enough water if it's not wasted. I don't know if this report is correct because it sounds ridiculous. I read a report that the Twin Falls Canal companies, there's 9 of them, that their canals are 30% efficient. And I called a friend that I grew up with, and he's got multiple farms down in that area off the canal, and he says it makes him sick to see, he's in the Buell area, some of his farms, that the water that runs over the canyon back into the Snake River. And it's just being 1908 water right being given to somebody downriver that has a junior water right to us. The quickest way to do this is, and I don't see anybody arguing, is you pass a law. The canal companies have to be so efficient, whatever is reasonable, or they lose that water right that they waste and send it down over the canyon walls. Thanks for this time, and I'm glad it's over.
Please join me in thanking our candidates for Idaho Senate. Now, Matt, are you here? Oh, okay. I've been in the cow business. I know how they kind of command my time. Do you mind then if I wrap up today? So on behalf of the Bingham County Republican Central Committee, we thank you all for attending. We thank the candidates for their generous allocation of time for being able to answer some questions. By the way, I can just say, Bingham County, you're keeping up your tradition of putting forward some of the finest candidates that we have in the state of Idaho. Congratulations to you, and please go home safely this evening. Thank you very much.